Hello, my beautiful human. Welcome back to the She Did It Anyway podcast. I am so excited for this episode because we're going to talk about my motherhood journey and we're going to just dive right in with my birth story. I don't even have my iPad if you're watching this on YouTube because I didn't want to take notes for this episode. I wanted it to be as unfiltered, even more unfiltered as possible when it comes to my journey and just like what the past 7 years, let's just say 8 years has been like. So if you are new here, I have a 7-year-old named Sebastian, and he is literally my whole entire life, like my reason for breathing, literally. And I got pregnant when I was 23, living in New York City. I was barely making any money. Like I was in the negative before I even had a bill due. It was insane. It was insane. So irresponsible of me. But also, I'm so happy that I did that because I experienced and learned so much while I was there. New York is it's just a different ball game, and I love it. It has a very special place in my heart for obvious reasons, but I just love the city. But yeah, so I was living in New York City and found out I was pregnant, and I was terrified, literally terrified. I come from a very conservative family, very like strict parents. I'm an only child. We came here from Egypt. Like literally my parents brought me here for a better life, and I went and got pregnant at 23. And I just think it's just insane. Like I look at 23-year-olds now and I'm like, oh my God, you should not be having a baby. And I look at myself back then and I'm like, God, I should not be having a baby. But what's crazy about it is that, so I find out I was pregnant at my office. I was working at Skip Hop, which eventually got bought out by Carter's. And I was working at Skip Hop. I missed my period. And because I used to compete, I actually missed my period a lot. And so I didn't think anything of it, but I used to do this thing, which is like why I think your mind is so powerful. I would always feel stressed, or if I missed my period, I would just like be anxious. So I would take a pregnancy test, and every single time, like knowing that I'm not pregnant, and for whatever reason, every time I would take it, I say it like every time as if I was like popping pregnancy tests left and right. That wasn't the case, but like literally it would just, when I did, I would get my period like an hour later. And I really think it was just like my stress level dropping, and this is like no science based behind it, but I would just feel relaxed and then my body would get my period. And so I was like, oh, another 20 bucks. Like I had no money, another 20 bucks that I'm spending, but I'll get my period right after. Like this is going to be great. I walk over to Dwayne Reed and I get a pregnancy test. I go in a bathroom. I pee on it. I'm like putting it on the side. I will literally never forget this. And I'm getting chills just thinking about it. And I was like about to go, like literally get dressed and like walk out of the bathroom. And I looked at the pregnancy test and it had 2 lines and it was pregnant. Literally, I will never forget that. I literally looked at it and I go, oh shit. Like it was so bad. And I was so unbelievably terrified. And so I had 2. And so I took the other one, and the other one also said that I was pregnant. And I walked out, I walked to my desk and I stayed there for a second. And I was just like in this fog. Like it felt like I was just living someone else's life. Like this was not really happening to me. And I walk into my VP of sales, her office, who I just look up to her so much and I admire her. And she had daughters and she always really looked out for me. And I remember she was the first person that I was pregnant. And it was just a wild, wild journey after that. Like it was just crazy, a ripple effect of like emotions. And one of the things that I really like think a lot like back to is just motherhood in general, and this thought and parenting and this feeling of unconditional love. And I want to preface, I'm probably going to cry at one point in this episode, so just like bear with me here. But not like a sad cry, like it's just a really grateful cry. And maybe a sad cry, I don't know. But I remember being like, okay, oh my God, like I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have this baby and I'm going to figure it out. Like, I'm just going to figure it out. And at this point, things weren't like really that bad in terms of like the relationship that I was in. It was like fine. And if you're ever in a relationship where you feel like, oh, it's just fine, it's probably really bad. Just looking back at it now, I think back to that and I'm like, God, that was bad. Like, oh, I just wish I knew better. But thankfully I didn't, because then I wouldn't have Sebastian. So that is aside. But I remember feeling like my parents were going to disown me. Like I literally, and if you don't know, like I'm Egyptian, I'm Coptic Orthodox, I grew up in the church, like my family's super religious. I have so many friends that are super religious, and like I grew up every Sunday going to church, going to Sunday school, and my parents are just the sweetest humans, like literally the sweetest humans. And they've worked so hard to just give me this gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous life that I like never felt like I needed anything, even though we didn't have anything. And I remember being like, oh my God, they're going to be so disappointed. They're going to like disown me. Literally, I'm already going to cry. I can't. This is not a podcast where I cry. This is not a crying podcast. Okay. So I just remember just feeling like so bad for them, because I just knew that they were going to take that as a reflection on themselves. Like they didn't do a good job. And as a parent now, I know Matt and I always feel like this is a reflection. How Sebastian ends up is a reflection of us. And I also know that like as a child, like as a daughter, it's also like it's not like we make our own decisions, and as a human and as an adult, like we make our own decision. And so I think the overwhelming fear of like just like guilt, this feeling of guilt, like I let them down, I can't believe like I got pregnant with someone that like I'm not even married to, I'm not even engaged, I didn't even want to get married to, like like this wasn't this ideal relationship, and I know that I didn't want that for myself, and I know that they didn't want that for me. And so I remember going and driving. I'll never forget this. My dad had, growing up, my dad had cancer and got his vocal cord, I think it's called, removed, one of them. And he was in remission, and he also was just like really sick health wise during this time. And so I remember being like, this is going to just kill him. This is going to take him out. Like it was just so scary. And so I remember renting a car. And mind you, so okay, rainy day, literally envision this. Rainy day, this 23-year-old, 6-week pregnant Marina Abraham goes into a rental place like a Hertz and says like, I want to rent a car. Out of all the cars they give me this bright yellow Bug, like the little like punch buggy or whatever they're called. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm driving from New York to Massachusetts to tell my parents this horrendous news that I know is going to like break their heart. Right at this point, I was just like so scared. It was so scary. Like this scary news. And I'm driving in this like on the highway. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm like driving my little yellow punch buggy. Is it called a punch buggy? Like my little Bug. And I'm like, okay, going to tell my parents that I'm pregnant at 23 and this is just going to be so bad and they're going to disown me. And this is the last time that I'm going to speak to them. And I remember calling my aunt and I was like, I really need your help to tell, like, I don't even need you to support me. I need you there for my mom and I need you there for my dad. And so I get there. Of course, she brought my uncle with her. It's like, no, this is not what we agreed upon. And I remember about to tell them, and my dad kept saying, you got married. He like thought I eloped. And I'm like, what? And I was like, in my head, I'm like, oh no, like if you're flipping out about that, you just wait. And if you are an immigrant, I mean, I guess it doesn't have to be just like Egyptians or immigrants, but like when my parents cry, it is just so dramatic. It's like they're like throwing themselves on the freaking floor and they're like slapping themselves. It was so bad. And I'm laughing now just because we're so far out of that and it's so beautiful now. But just like imagine me telling my parents that I'm pregnant. My dad actually like was like very calm and took the keys to the car and just like left the pizza store because I had told him at the restaurant. And my mom was like inconsolable. Like she was just crying so hard. And I eventually took my keys and I just got back in my yellow car and I drove back to New York and crying, like everybody's just crying. And I remember feeling like, oh my God, like I let my parents down. Like they're never going to speak to me again. And this just really shows you like it's just really explained to me what unconditional love meant. And like I saw it come to life. And I remember like driving to New York and I got a call from my dad and he literally like calmly was like, "Sweetheart, are you okay?" And I will never forget that because it was just like, oh my God, like what? It was wild. And so at that point, I was like, oh my God, it's like, I'm just so beyond grateful for that type of love because I do understand that not everybody gets to experience or feel unconditional love from their partners or from their parents. And I was just so grateful for them. So fast forward, I'm 6 weeks pregnant and I had already moved from the Upper East Side, New York to the Bronx. And so I like built my crib in my apartment. I had a little baby shower and it was really so amazing to see the love and the support that I got from so many people, like so many people. And it was, I think it was like a month before I was due. It was like, I can't live here anymore. I can't live here. And so I finished out my pregnancy at home. I moved back with my parents. And fortunately, they had the space for me and had an extra bedroom for Sebastian. And it was just so great. And so I ended up like creating this nursery for him. And it was just so sweet. And I remember my parents were just so excited for the baby to come. Like it just felt crazy to see the shift of like this stress and sadness and anxiety and fear and like deciding we're going to figure this out. We're going to do it anyway. And having it just completely shift to such a beautiful journey and so much happiness. And so, okay, I'm 40 weeks pregnant and I am scheduled for get induced because I had low platelets. And so they didn't want me to keep going to have my platelets drop any lower. And then I wouldn't have been able to have like a C-section or epidural. They would have just put me to sleep because of my low platelets, which made no sense to me at that point because I didn't understand what they were saying. But now as a full adult grown up, I understand. And so I went in and this is just so funny. So if you know me, if you're watching this, you see me, I have a massive orange hat, orange shirt, like pink walls. I'm just decked out. This is just me. So imagine the things that I packed in my hospital bag. I have feather slippers. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Feather slippers, satin pajama set, like a 2-piece pajama set that I can pull over so I can breastfeed. I have my hair and makeup fully done, decked out. I'm thinking I'm going to walk in, face beat, like just so good. And I'm going to have this baby and it's going to be so beautiful. And I'm going to be so grateful. I mean, graceful. Did I say graceful or grateful? Whatever. Graceful. I meant graceful. And girl, what? Like, what? First of all, I am one of those humans that actually feels like, yes, motherhood is so beautiful and birth is so beautiful, but the concept of a human living in your belly in a ball and then coming out a full human and then you just go back to normal, I'm like, what? How? Like, how is this? Like, how is this a thing? But that just shows you like the beauty of a female's body. It's the craziest thing. And so I go in there fully decked. I'm ready to go, ready to pop this baby out. They check me. I'm like -1,000 dilated. Okay. Like I am not even anywhere near going into labor. And so they give me the Pitocin and it got bad. Like I feel like I'm fine. I think the only like with pain, I think sometimes like I'll get a paper cut in between like my finger and my thumb and it like really sets me off. But like other than that, I have a tattoo. I've got my ears pierced. Like I'm fine with pain. Nope. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Not this type of pain. Nope. 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 And I'm sorry if you're hearing this and you're pregnant and you're like, no, I have never in my life experienced that type of pain ever. The catch here, I was only like 1 centimeter dilated. Like, why is it so painful? And they kept saying, like, from a 1 to 10, how much pain are you feeling? I'm like, a 10, but I also know that that's not realistic because I'm not even anywhere near halfway to my dilation. Like, it was so bad. It was so bad. So I got there on the 15th. Sebastian wasn't born until the 17th. Okay. 17th at 7:43 p.m. Like, wild. One full day of getting induced and nothing. Literally the second day, I was going to lose my mind because every time they would do the cervix checks, I was like, the max I got was 2.5 centimeters. And I was like, you need to give me the epidural right now. Like, I can't do this anymore. And all their advice was like, I had a doula who I didn't even know I had. Like, the hospital just gave you a doula. She was a volunteer, and it was really amazing. It was really, really cool to see. But she would just like keep giving me warm blankets and jello, and like, people were like, just go for a walk. And like, I don't want to go for a walk. Like, I want this kid out of me. And I was just really uncomfortable. Like, genuinely, it was so painful. So painful. And I had my mom, and my mom brought my aunt with her. Like, why is my aunt here? Why is this why is this a show for people? Like, what is happening? But I am grateful that she brought the aunt for herself, which I totally understand. And I remember being like, Mom, do you want to be in the room with me when I give birth? And she's like, what? No, why would I ever do that? And I realized, yeah, so in Egypt, that wasn't a thing back in the day. And so when I asked her to be in the room, she was like, ew, no, why would I do that? And so I was like, okay, fine. Like, you don't have to be in the room. And I knew she wouldn't have been able to handle it. And I knew it, like, I would have then spent my labor comforting her while I'm pushing. And we don't need that. Like, it was just so funny. And so she wasn't in the room. I end up eventually getting the epidural. They give me the epidural 4 times. It worked on the 4th time. The first 3 times, only the right side was working, that would go numb. And so they were like putting me on my side and it was a disaster. The problem is, once it started working, I was numb from my shoulders down. I couldn't even move my fingers. And so they literally had to push me up and push my legs up and hold my legs up because I couldn't feel anything. And I started like throwing up, and I was just like lightheaded. My blood pressure, I always get this wrong, but like, my blood pressure increased and Sebi's heart rate went down, something like that, or the opposite. But it was so bad. These alarms went off. It was just such a disaster, which is really funny because I felt like in the moment I was fine. And even describing it, like, after, when I got home, I was like, oh, it was all right. Like, yeah, these little hiccups happened, but like, no big deal. And now I look back and I'm like, what a disaster. Like, that was terrible. And, but I will tell you, the epidural was just the most amazing thing that I've ever experienced in my life. Like, when I have my girlfriends or anyone that I know that are like, no, I'm going to go all natural, I'm just like, good for you, but also like, how? Not even why, how? And yeah, that was not for me. Like, I wanted the epidural at 26 weeks. Like, it was just like, give it to me now. And I'm also the person that like doesn't take Advil for headaches, which is really, really funny. So I get the epidural at 2.5 centimeters. Within like 4 hours, I go to 9 centimeters. My body was finally like, thank you, Jesus. Like, I was just too tense. And I had one of my girlfriends, Oli, her and my best friend Rosie were like in a text group with me, and they kept saying like, get the epidural, like, your body's just too tense right now, like, you need to relax. And so they were so right when I got it, I calmed down, and it was just the best thing in the world. I felt nothing. And so then doctor comes, she was like, okay, you're 10 centimeters dilated. I have a C-section in 30 minutes. Do you think you can get the baby out in under 30 minutes? What? I have no idea. I've never done this before. And like, I heard on average, it takes like an hour and a half for the first kid to come out when you're pushing. And so I was like, whatever. So I push, and girl, that baby was out. 3 sets of pushes. So every, I think it was like 3, then pause, 3 and pause, 3 and pause. He just popped right out, and he was just the best thing in the world. The problem was, I think, because his heart rate had dropped, like, I don't know what it is, but he came out obviously not breathing, but also like the color of this mic. He was so black and blue. It was the scariest thing to see. And then they did what they had to do, and he was breathing, and he was totally fine. I have pictures, and he was like, you could see he was still black and blue from like an hour after. It was wild. But he was so healthy, and he was so cute, and he was just the best thing in the world. And I spent the night at the 2 nights in the hospital, and they would take him so I would sleep while it wasn't feeding time, and then they would wake me up and I would breastfeed, and it was just so nice having them there. And I remember when they told me that I had to go home, I was like, why? Like we're all having such a great time. like you love him. You love me. Like, why can't we just stay here? Um, but I remember it was like me and my mom, and we took him home. My dad met us at the house, and my mom was like bringing everything in. And it was just, I talk about this all the time. This moment, I was sitting on my couch. Sebi was in the car seat, like at my feet. And I just looked at him. And that was the first time that I felt like I broke down into tears. And I was like, we got this, bud. Like, we got this. Like, I will do everything in my power to protect you and to just be the best mom in the world. And it was a whirlwind. It has been a whirlwind since then. And, Sebi's birthday is in November 17th, and the years are flying. Like, I'm telling this story as if it was yesterday because it just seems like it was yesterday, and it's 7 years. That's crazy, crazy, crazy to me. And I would say the first year, so I took 11 months off of work. I had my maternity leave, and then I was living with my parents, and so I had saved money. It was really, really amazing. And I'm just so fortunate for that time. But I really took that time to go to therapy, take care of my health, take care of him. We would like wake up. This was literally my schedule. We would wake up. My parents worked all hours of the day. It was crazy. They would work from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. at their pizza store in Worcester. And so it was just me and him like the whole time. And the best part was my dad would do the 2 a.m. feedings when they got home, or like the 2:30 a.m. feedings when he got home. And so I would pump, and then my dad would use the bottle. It was the best thing in the world. And he just loved it. But what's crazy, and I say all the time, like, listening to this episode, in the beginning, I was talking about how like scared I was and all of this unconditional love. I'm telling you right now, like my parents love me so much. They love Sebastian in a way that I did not think was like physically possible. Like truly, I did not think it was physically possible. And I love that for them. And I love that for Sebastian. I love that he has such amazing grandparents and Matt's parents. It's just so insane. And I just thank God every day for like the evolution of this love that we are surrounded by. And so we would wake up every morning, just thinking back at my schedule, we'd wake up every morning. I would feed him. He would go back to sleep. I would shower and get ready for the gym. He would wake up. I would then feed him again. We would go to the gym, and it was like this beautiful gym in my old town. And there was like a little kids area. It was barely ever any kids, and it was like the best babysitters that were there. And so I would leave him. I would go do cardio, the sauna, and then I would go get him, come home, shower, feed him, eat, like do all the things, hang out in the house, or go to the mall. Like Natick Mall is like where we lived. I would just like walk around, and I would go in the pumping room or the breastfeeding room, and I would like the lounge that they had, and I would breastfeed, and then I would like walk around, come home, feed. I was like just constantly feeding. And I would get ready and go to the gym again, and he would be sleeping, and then I would come home and do like everything. And I remember like during that year, I mean, we did the same thing every single day, and I was in the best shape of my life. It's actually crazy to think back to that. It was just such a peaceful time. And I was like driving to go see my best friend in Jersey, and I would stay there, and we just like did so much. We went to Florida and visited my other best friend there. It was just like so relaxing and so peaceful. And I wish that I had known that right when I got pregnant. I think I wouldn't have been so scared if I knew that things would be okay, but you just don't know until you do it, And it's just insane to look back and think of how I just had the worst feelings in terms of like my failure, and I'm not going to be able to do this, and oh my God, like what if I don't give him this like amazing life? And I remember like every time I would just feel him kick in my belly, I was like, okay, we got this, bud. We got this. I always say like I have one job, and it's especially as the first year, I would literally always say I have one job. It was just to keep you alive, buddy. Like let's just keep going. And he was colicky, and he would spit up, and every time he would cry, I'd be like, what do you want? I just changed your diaper and I fed you. Like what is wrong? And it was just crazy, and things that nobody really like tells you, and if they do, you don't get it until you're in that position. And I think back now, like, I actually don't know who I would be as a person if I wasn't a mother. Like, being a mom is the best thing that has ever happened to me. And it's really cool to be able to now see Sebastian as a 7-year-old. And so if you've followed me for a while, I reconnected with Matt when Sebi was 18 months, and it really felt like he was made to be a father, but it also felt like he was like made to be Sebastian's father. Why am I gonna cry again? I can't do this. Like, he's just the best dad in the world, and Sebi is just so lucky to have him. And I actually didn't think I would ever feel like that, because my dad is the best dad in the world, and he was the best father figure for Sebi, like, truly. So to be able to say that about another man is just like so exciting for me. And I'm just so happy that Sebi has that. God, this podcast is a the doozy. But yeah, so I met Matt when he was 18 months, and we really just like kicked it off. I reconnected with Matt when Sebi was like 16 months or a year and a half. And then after a couple months, he met Sebastian, and it was just like, we were just inseparable ever since. And the love that he has is just insane. And, to see Sebastian with Matt being his dad, and Matt legally adopted him in 2020. It's just like, it's really such a beautiful journey, which leads me to 2023. And we didn't have, like, just going back to this, sorry. We didn't have terrible twos. We had terrible threes. Sebi was horrendous, wild in the best way possible. But I want to preface, like, God blessed me with such a good boy, like, good sleeper, easy baby, didn't really cry much, was such like a fun boy, happy boy, listens to directions, like, just like a good kid. And it really had nothing to do with Matt and I. Like, he was a good kid, and he still is a good kid. However, he is wild. Like, the things that come out of his mouth, Matt and I look at each other and we're like, who raised you? Like, where did you get this stuff? And it's these older kids in school and on the bus, I swear. And he comes home and I'm like, buddy, how do you know that? And he's like, oh, this kid told me on the bus. Or I'm like, oh my God. But it's just the best thing. And I would say I said this when he was 5, and then I said it when he was 6. I'm saying it when he's 7. This is my favorite age. Like, he's just our best bud, like, bestest friend in the whole entire world. And I am just so happy that I'm his mom. And I'm just so happy that everything happened exactly the way that it happened. And I tell Sebi all the time, he was like, you wanted a boy? And I was like, no, baby, I wanted you. Like, when I think about a son, like, I like Sebastian is like my dream child, and he is just such a gift from God, and I'm so grateful for him. And I think one of the biggest things with motherhood is nobody teaches you how to be a good mom, because a good mom is just like, it means something different to every child, because every child needs a different type of mom. And I've just always felt like I just like really don't want to mess this up. And I think about it all the time of like, just want to keep being like a good mom to him, and support him in any way that he wants and any way that he needs. And so at 7 now, he's in school, he's working on his speech and reading and writing, and seeing him progress is really amazing. Seeing him at times struggle with little things. It's not like anything major, but like learning something new and seeing him struggle with it, I'm like, you're so smart, like, you're gonna do great. And it's just so crazy to have these emotions for this little human, like, literally just like this little human walking around trying to figure out life. And one of my favorite things, and I know this is one of Matt's favorite things as well, is watching Sebastian experience life and having us experience life through his eyes. It's really just so amazing to see the things that he loves and the things that he's amazed by. And so Matt and I are both entrepreneurs, and I would say that is one of the hardest things that we've probably ever experienced or put ourselves in that situation, because, with entrepreneurship, it's just there's so much of your time that is needed, and we always work so hard to make sure that we have this work-life harmony where Sebastian is also getting so much of our time, and we're never missing an activity or a sport or an event, and he's coming with us to as many places as possible. And he came with me to Create and Cultivate, and he sits with me for coaching calls, and I just we just want him to experience everything with us. And I think when I think back, or when I think to motherhood, it's like this mixture of emotions where you're at times feeling guilt, and at other times feeling like, happy and privileged, and at other times you just feel like, maybe I'm not doing the best job ever, and again, other times you're like, I'm the best parent in the world, and it's a mix of emotions. And I think all I care about is giving Sebastian the love and support that he needs. Not that I think he needs, but the one that like he needs, and he vocalizes, and we see that he needs, and just supporting him in whatever he wants to do. Like, I just want him to figure out life and make the mistakes and experience life the way he wants to experience it. And I just want to give him the unconditional love that I received from my parents through all of the good and all of the bad. And I get a lot of questions to wrap this up, because we're really, I could go for hours about this, but when I think about motherhood, I remind myself of just like the love that I received from my mom, and how grateful and privileged I am to have that. I want to always remind myself to give myself grace. I get a lot of messages about how do you do it? Like, how are you a mom and traveling and entrepreneur? And it's just like, for me to be the best mom that Sebastian needs, I need to live out my dreams. I need to go after my goals. I need to take time for myself. I need to set my boundaries and implement them, like really implement them and vocalize it. I need to express my emotions to him and to Matt and to my friends and my family. I need to do all of those things so I can be an amazing mom. And I get asked a lot if I feel any guilt when I travel. And at times I do, but at other times I think, wow, how cool is it that Sebastian gets to watch me do this? This is going to be a norm for him. He's going to get older and be like, oh, I'm traveling the world. And, oh, I want to build a business maybe, or I want to do this. It's like, he gets to do that. And he won't be scared of doing the like abnormal or out of ordinary things, because he's seen his mom and dad do it. And that's the best thing in the world. And so that's why the guilt isn't always there when I am working and I am traveling, because he just gets to see that. And that is a privilege within itself. That is my journey to motherhood. And thank you for allowing me to have this space where I get to talk to you about it and cry and laugh and bring you into this life of ours. It is such a sacred and precious thing that we value. And so bringing you into that means so much to me. And so I just always appreciate the love and the support and the kind words, and always, just riding this wave with me and figuring out life with me. So I am so grateful for you. And I hope that if you're listening to this and you're a mom, just know that you're doing such an amazing job. Like, genuinely, you're doing such an amazing job, and to give yourself grace. Like, nobody teaches you how to do this. And if you are soon to be a mom, I know that you're going to do amazing, and I promise you everything is always going to be fine. And if you never want to be a mom, I hope you also enjoyed this episode. I love you. I'm so grateful for you. I will see you so soon. Bye. And don't forget, no matter what, she did it anyway.
You did it, Mom.